Another little-known WPA project is the Torrance High School Auditorium, built in 1937. It was funded through the LA Unified School District since Torrance had not yet seceded from that district. That dirt field that once looked like this now looks like this. In January 2011, it was dedicated to become Seaside Heroes Park in honor of the community's fallen soldiers. It's yet another testament to the tenacity of this little community of Torrance that could. From Seaside Ranchos, Colleen Farrell with the Centennial History Minute. A hallway here in the West Annex of City Hall serves as a hall of fame of sorts for Torrance Rose Float history. It's here where you can get a sense of the unique flavor Torrance has contributed to the parade each year. Potential threat to homes, power lines, and other resources prompted the Umpqua National Forest to call in a national team to handle a more complex situation. Overnight, this camp here has grown to about 600 people. The South Bay has deep-rooted armed forces ties, serving as the home to many aerospace and defense industry companies. This makes it a natural fit for an armed forces parade. But Al-Eisen's primary objective was paying tribute to the military for its service to our country. In honor of Torrance's 2012 centennial, we're exploring the people, places, and things that have played a key role in making the city what it is today. As part of our centennial programming, we're speaking with those who've served the position of Torrance mayor. And the city really makes careful decisions when they decide what companies they want to come into this area. What sort of, from a big picture perspective, guides them in making those type of decisions?
Well, you know, actually, this is really complicated in the sense that we're a very aggressive city.
Live from Bend, KTVZ presents Central Oregon's most complete news source. You're watching Z21 News at 11.
The fate of more than 70 Deschutes County workers rests on the results of tomorrow's election. Good evening, Central Oregon. Thanks for watching Z21 News at 11. I'm Colleen Farrell. Tomorrow, voters will decide the fate of Sheriff Services in Deschutes County under Measure 47. A 50% turnout is needed to legitimize elections on money issues. As Z21's Sarah Kehoe reports, this has some county officials in fear of what's to come. In Washington, D.C. today, the Pentagon announced its plans for the future, and it involves fewer bases and fewer people. All of it designed to save money without weakening the nation's defenses. Jim Hanchett has the story from Washington. Welcome back. Some local grade school students took a trip back in time as part of their American history lesson. Really makes you appreciate how much easier things are now.
Absolutely. You know, the NBA hasn't been around more than 50 years, Colleen, but it is game one in the Western Conference Finals. The Jazz and the Rockets try to go one up first in abbreviated sports ball.
I think after all these years, we still have people that come together. This many people come down here to Torrance to celebrate this parade. It's just amazing to me.
Each year in May, thousands line Torrance Boulevard to honor our men and women in uniform.
It's wonderful, and I think it's a great way to honor all our service people and, of course, honor those people that are out there right now that are doing so much and sacrificing so much for us.
It all began on May 19, 1960. Torrance Mayor Albert Eisen urged all Torrance residents and businesses to proudly display the American flag for what would be the most ambitious military observance in Southern California at the time. The festivities that inaugural year included the crowning of a young local woman, Betty Baker, as Miss Armed Forces Day, along with a local essay contest. That year, more than 50,000 spectators turned out for what would become a proud Torrance tradition for the next half century.
The man was brilliant in the number of things that he did for the city. One of the things he did for the city was the creation of the Armed Forces Parade. It's the longest running civic armed forces parade in the United States.
The South Bay has deep-rooted armed forces ties, serving as the home to many aerospace and defense industry companies. This makes it a natural fit for an armed forces parade. But Al-Eisen's primary objective was paying tribute to the military for its service to our country. In its first years, the parade drew participation of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, with the El Segundo-based Space and Missile Organization of the U.S. Air Force playing a starring role. Through the years, the parade's Grand Marshal roster has become a who's who list of high-ranking civilians, as well as the Armed Forces' most decorated leaders. Among the most notable was Army General Omar N. Bradley, who in 1969 was the highest-ranking military officer and hero of World War II's Normandy invasion. The 1980s brought a key parade milestone, recognition as a Department of Defense designated site for Armed Forces observance.
That's very important because what it means is that the Department of Defense, the agencies, the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and the Coast Guard, who belongs to Homeland Security now, that allows them to spend resources or assets on supporting the parade.
During this same era, Councilmember Bill Applegate and other members of the Parade Planning Committee met face-to-face with high-ranking military officials in Washington, D.C. to bring forth another key change, designating one branch of the military as the honored service for each parade year. The U.S. Coast Guard was also added to this rotation. It's a change Applegate credits with ensuring all future Grand Marshals would be among the highest-ranking members of the military.
One of the items that became very, very important with us being able to recruit the proper Grand Marshal was to take the Grand Marshal of the immediate past year and use that person as leverage to help us recruit the next year's person.
The city and the Torrance Chamber of Commerce jointly planned the parade up until the late 1970s. It was then that our own local armed forces, the Torrance Police Department, began to take a more active role, interfacing directly with the military.
This is an event that does take us a year to plan and put together. So there's meetings ahead of time. We'll take trips to Fort Irwin. We'll go out to Los Alamitos. We'll take a trip back to the Pentagon to meet with the military branches back there, all in preparation for the parade.
This is a big thrill for these kids to get a chance to walk down this parade route. And as short as their little legs are, they march the entire way.
The military branches may rotate, but one face and voice has remained a parade constant. Former Marine Pat Coulter has served as the official parade MC for 39 years.
I started a long time ago, and the Vietnam War was just winding down in those days, and there were real pockets of resistance to the military. And that's one of the reasons that the Department of Defense salutes and supports the city of Torrance for this event, because when it was not very popular across the rest of the nation to support our military people, the people who are citizens of this great city and the people who ran this great city opened their arms and welcomed the military in.
It's an effort that has put Torrance on the map among the military's highest brass.
A great barometer is when we walk the halls of the Pentagon, that the folks there know the city of Torrance and they know the parade. I think that's a great barometer to use at how not only well known we are, but how successful we've been, that we are known in those circles, and I guess it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Big in D.C., but also a big deal for the thousands who turn out each year back at home. This includes the parade's local entries, from school bands to scouts to drill teams.
The Los Angeles Police Department motorcycle drill team, back in Torrance.
There's always something different coming down the street. I think that's really the main focus for the kids that are there, and it's just so visual. You know, when you go from a tank that comes down the street to equipment that's shooting water across, the crowd, and then looking up and seeing a C-17 that flies over. It doesn't get any better than that.
For the thousands of participants and parade goers, it's that unique blend of fun, pomp and circumstance, and patriotism that makes the parade an integral part of the city's fabric and legacy. Colleen Farrell with the Centennial Oral History. It was the late 1950s in Torrance. The city was basking in its recent All-America City Award for unprecedented growth following World War II. It was the atomic age and the era of early space travel. The architecture and design of the day reflected a theme of man's utopian future. Examples of this include the Seattle Space Needle, the restaurant tower at LAX, and here in Torrance, the since demolished Parasol Restaurant, located at Crenshaw and PCH. Today, some consider it to be an embarrassing blip in America's design past, but there's a growing movement to preserve this style of Jetsons meets the Flintstones industrial design. The style is known as Googie, pioneered by John Lautner, who designed this LA coffee shop in 1949.
Googie architecture was architecture started in the 50s and ran into the early 60s. It was really named for a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, Googie's, and when a architectural critic drove past there, he saw that and named all that style of architecture.
Googie has also been called Populux, Doo-Wop, Coffee Shop Modern, Jet Age, Space Age, and Chinese Modern. Its elements include upswept roofs, large domes, boomerang shapes, atomic models, starbursts, flying saucers, and exposed steel beams. While many of the city's Googie architectural features are now gone, a large piece of this movement is still very visible right here on Crenshaw Boulevard. The original 1958 sign at Palos Verdes Bowl is a classic Googie design.
Probably way oversized for the sign that you would really need, so it goes beyond that to be eye-catching. And so there's a huge Space Needle up there. Some will say it's a sail for reference to the South Bay. And then if you look at the very top of that, once again, the atomic symbology up there. You gotta remember what we were going through in the early 50s. You know, is this a big disaster of the future, or is it in fact something that's gonna be the wonder of the future?
The Googie theme was carried through in subtle ways in the bowling alley itself.
You could say it's maybe an ode to Googie architecture.
Man's continuing link with nature was often expressed using rock walls to break down the barriers between inside and outside. Exposed steel beams with geometric cutout holes resemble rocket gantries and serve form over function. While most of PV Bowl's regulars are probably blissfully unaware of the architectural significance of the building and its sign, the large ship sail doesn't go unnoticed by Torrance in-flight visitors.
We're very close to the Torrance Airport, and so this is either in the taking off pattern or in the landing pattern, but they use the ball. It's supposed to look like a bowling ball on top of the sign, and they use that as a point of reference.
But the sign hasn't always been as popular among those on the ground.
It's probably the tallest sign in the city, and probably one of the most unusual signs in the city. Actually, they were trying to get me to remove it probably 20 years ago, and I just said it's really us, and just part of our heritage. And so they finally agreed to let me keep it.
Whether Googie is viewed as an historic treasure or an eyesore, architects such as Dean Ruder call it a style that helps us reflect on where we've been and what might be in store for our future.
That's an interesting juxtaposition. It was an attempt to be modern, and somehow the modern went past that already. I think we should save a little bit of the architecture. At this point, we've lost so many historical buildings, not just the South Bay, but throughout Los Angeles, that now we're saving old buildings and not historical buildings because we've lost that chance. It's a shame that we lost the Parasol here, just so, for generations, we've got a little touch of that past.
But for now, bowlers and Torrance residents can still appreciate this blast from our 50s and 60s past. Colleen Farrell with the Centennial History Minute. Over the weekend, residents of the Dry Creek area watched and waited for evacuation commands as smoke settled in like fog. The spring fire, at one point contained, had nearly doubled in size overnight.
This fire was burning within Wilderness until Saturday, when weather conditions starts from a lightning storm on Friday, and extreme fire behavior caused rapid growth in this fire.
Comes off the mountaintop, 6 is in camp. Not bigger.
The fire spread forced firefighters to abandon their base camp for higher ground at the Tokati Air Base and send for more help, including Army National Guard troops. Everyone here is gearing up for a long stay. Potential threat to homes, power lines, and other resources prompted the Umpqua National Forest to call in a national team to handle a more complex situation. Overnight, this camp here has grown to about 600 people. Sunday, a thick inversion layer of smoke combined with humidity and cooler temperatures slowed fire growth and enabled firefighters to beef up fire lines near the Dry Creek area. Still, progress is slow.
The terrain out there is really steep, and so it's a lot of hard work getting up one hill. We had a crew, it took, it seems a couple of hours to get up one side of a ridge.
Crews continue to monitor progress round the clock, but there's still no estimate on a containment date. And despite their best efforts, success or failure still lies at the mercy of the weather. At the Tokati Air Base, Colleen Farrell, Northwest News. 71-year-old Bill Sanowski always considered tending his 2,000-acre Paulina ranch as more fun than work. But in recent years, he began feeling a slow change in his once strong body.
Every day, you can feel yourself slipping. And I figured I had 20 more days. I was that close. And just harder to breathe.
Sanowski suffered from an enlarged heart, a common effect of congestive heart failure. On a list for a heart transplant, doctors informed him of an experimental technique developed by a Brazilian doctor. It involves cutting out a portion of the heart to reduce its overall size. Many doctors have scoffed at the idea, but Sanowski was eager to try.
There was doctors there that didn't want to have anything to do with this at all. They didn't want to even get it started. They said until they had more proof. How do you get proof without doing something?
Sanowski and his wife Marie flew to Cleveland to undergo the operation. Doctors removed a portion of Sanowski's heart that had stretched to the size of a football, along with 25 pounds of water from his lung.
Geez, I felt so good the few days after, I couldn't believe that I could breathe so good and everything because the other lungs started breathing.
It's been nearly 6 months since Bill's surgery, and each day he says he feels better and better. Right before the surgery, he says he was lucky to get out on the ranch at all. Now he's working up to 4 hours per day. In Brazil, many patients have died as a result of this procedure. Doctors in the U.S. are linking this to a lack of patient screening. Sanowski attributes his survival to his otherwise good health and his attitude.
I've lived 6 months longer than I would have already. I don't know how long I will live, but then I'll just take it day by day. Like my wife always says, positive thinking.
In Paulina, Colleen Farrell for NBC News.